Welcome, everyone. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about classes and what they're used for and why they're important. So up until now, most people are very familiar with procedural style of programming where you have a bunch of procedures or functions, and then you have variables. You may have some structures or vectors, and you basically have a main that just goes boom, 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 and calls all kinds of things to get stuff done. Well, that's great. And that works for most programs. However, once you start using programs that are very large, and you may run into the exact same code, so then you could use a class, just like the bunch of library functions. Every time you include string, every time you include C math, all those functions become available to you. So we're going to write a class called a rectangle class. And it's going to be very simple. It's just basically going to have a length and a width. But we're not going to be able to use it unless we do some special stuff. But the advantage of it is once we create the class, we can then go and use that class. And all we have to do is include it in a header. That's going to be in a separate video. But for right now, we're just going to do a very simple way of creating a class. So to create a class, all you have to do is type the word class. And then as any user-defined object, you should begin with a capital letter. So now we are actually working into what's called OOP, or Object-Oriented Programming. So we have rectangle. Now I believe I have it spelled right. And then we have our opening braces. And I always like to put in a comment as to what the closing brace is for. So we do class rectangle, and that will pay you big dividends whenever you have a whole bunch of opening and closing braces. Maybe some of them are embedded, and you might have deleted one, and then all of a sudden your program stops working. So right now we have basically nothing. So we're going to have an integer called length, and we'll set it to 0. And then we'll have an integer called width, and we'll set that to 0. So to create the class, we now have a class in here, but to actually create it inside of main, we call it like any other data type. So right now we have a class that has a length and a width. So that's of, right now, let's see if it's of any value. So I'm going to create a class called rectangle. Now I like to begin my classes with a C. I like to begin my structures with a C, and I like to bring vectors with a C. So what we do is name the data type, which is rectangle. And then we have C rectangle. So to access the elements of a class, all you need to do is type the name of the class, which is crec, and a dot. But wow, nothing's there. So this is of absolutely no value to us right now. The reason why there's nothing there is because by default, everything is called private, which means it's only accessible from within the class unless it's declared public. So public is not the default value, private is. So I like to always define whether they're private by typing in private. If I don't type in anything, then it's automatically going to be private. So what we need is some stuff that can be called by the main program. So we'll just create public, the 2 dots. So now what we need is a way to set the length and a way to set the width. So we want a function that's going to set the length, and it's going to take an integer parameter. And so let's go now down here and see what happens when we type in crec. Now all of a sudden we have set length. So we're able to call a function that does absolutely nothing. So that's at this point in time still no value. So let's go and create the function. And I'm going to create it inside the rectangle class over here, meaning it'll be between the class definition and main. So actually, it's actually not. So I'm going to move it. and put it here. And that will take care of that. So we need an integer, and we're going to call this length. And I'm just going to make it len so I can show you how this pointer works. So you should be familiar with pointers by now. So let's go and do a length equals len. So this is the length from the class. This is the length that was passed to the setLength function. So now let's just go setLength, and let's set it to 20. So now we need to find out a way to get what the actual length is. So we need a function that's going to actually get the length. So this particular case is going to be an integer, and we're going to need to put it up here. So let's do void get length. And we don't pass anything. So let's create our function. And all we're going to do here is return length. So let's go back to our main function. Let me get rid of this integer here. And we will type in crec dot. Now we have get length and set length. So if I just click on get length, that's not going to really help us out any unless we're printing it. So let's create a couple local variables. And I'll do length. And we'll do width. And then we'll do area, because we'll be using area shortly. So now we have a couple variables that do absolutely nothing, but we can now do length equals crec dot. And let's see what we're doing. Oh, we need an equal sign. And we'll do get length. And then we can see out length. And I see a little red thing, so I may have to correct that. And length. All right, so let's see what this issue, get lengths is of type, so I may have made a mistake. We need to change this to integer, and we need to change this to integer. That solves that problem. So let's go and run this and see if we have a length of 20. Move this over here, and our length is 20. Good. So now we're going to write the set width and get width. So I like to keep my setters and getters together. So we'll do void, and we'll do set width. And we need to pass an integer. And then let's go and create that. And we're setting the width. So this time I want to use width. I don't want to type, I can't think of anything witty. Width, that just doesn't do it. The width, that just doesn't do it. So let's just type width here. So now what we need to do is width. We can't really type width equals width. That doesn't kind of make sense. So there must be a way to determine which is the width inside the function and which, or rather inside the class, and what's inside of the actual function. And we have the this. So once I hit the dot, it will actually change it. So notice that it put in like a little arrow, and that equals width. So this dot width means the class width, and this width in here is this width over here. So let's go and return our width. We'll just write another function that says integer, and we need to get width. So in our main, we are going to do width equals get width. And I always seem to forget to type in the class first. And then we'll do cout width. And we'll put in width. So far we're looking good. So let's see how this works now. I don't think we set the width, and we have an error here. So let's see what our error is, probably because we never set the width. So let's go and set our width. I'll do it here. crec dot. Okay, let's try this one more time. And we're going to do set width, and let's set it to say 15. And now we can try this again. So width equals get width. So now we're doing good. Let's run this program again, see if we have 20 and 15. And there's errors. Awesome. So let's see what the error in here. So it says unresolved symbol in public in here, get width in here. So that is not good. So let's see if we have get length. And that's simple. We never actually did this. And that is a good reason as to why it's so important to do one thing and test it. So let's go and create this here and get width. So we just return width. Now we should get it to work. And let's run it again. And it's looking good. So length is 20 and width is 15. So what's last now is to do the area. Now notice I have length and width, but I don't have area. And the reason why I don't have area is because we know what the length can't change. We know the width can't change, but the area might change simply by changing the length and the width. Well, that would mean if we did a change to the length, the area might not change. So it's really not necessary to save it here. So what we'll do is we'll write a function that's going to be get the area, or we could call it calc area. Either way is fine. So let's create an integer, and we'll call it get area. And we need to create that. And it's really very simple. We're going to return the length times the width. And I always like to put any calculations in parentheses. I think that's just good habit. So now we're going to do area equals crec dot get area. And let's see if we actually did it right. Okay, one more time. So we have our length is 20, our width is 15, and our area is 300. Well, that's good. So let's try something a little sneaky. Let's just go and do set our length to say 30. And we'll change this to 30. Now, if I were to print out area, what's going to wind up happening is still going to be 300. So what we want to do is area equals get area and print it out again. And this time it should reflect the changes. Now I'm not printing out the width and the length on this. I'm just printing out the area, which should change. So the first time around we have 20 times 15 is 300. Then the next time is 30 times 15, which is 450. So that is all that I want to show you in this video. In our next video, we're going to write a constructor, a default constructor. Maybe I don't want to have to set the length and the width to 20 every single time I do something. So I can create a rectangle and set the length and the width without having to do the set length and set width. So we're going to do that with a constructor. Then there's some issues in here with what happens if I try to set the length to say -5, or I try to set the width to -5. So we need to have a way to make sure that that doesn't happen. So let's go and end this video here. Then we will create another video and I'll have a few more little tricks in here to show you. And by then you should have a good concept of what's going on. That's it. Have a great day. Please make sure that you like the video. If you like it, please subscribe to my channel and please leave comments. That helps me. And if there's a video that you would like made, please let me know and I will do my best to make it as quickly as possible. With that, have a wonderful day.